Welcome everyone to Lichfield District Council Planning Committee. This is a public held broadcast. It's taking place on Monday, the 3rd of November 2025. The meeting is streamed live via our website and available on YouTube. I therefore ask you to conduct yourself in an appropriate manner. I welcome those present in the public seating area and ask that you be respectful to the committee members, its officers and all those speaking. I ask that you remain seated and quiet during these proceedings. My name is Councillor Chetland. I'm Chair of Lichfield's Planning Committee. In a moment, I will ask everyone participating in the meeting to introduce themselves. Before doing so, can I remind everyone in the meeting to ensure that their mobile and electronic devices are switched to silent or off, please. For those of you who have registered to speak, ensure that your content is relevant and material to the debate in hand and that you are mindful of allotted speaking time. And I'll remind you of that before you speak. If you go over this time, you will be asked to stop when speaking. For the particular benefit of those who are watching from home, as well as those watching in the room, I ask that you speak clearly, particularly as I've got hearing aids and I need that more than most. The Planning Committee is a non-political quasi-judicial committee bound by the National Planning Policy Framework, Lichfield's Local Plan and the Supplementary Planning Guidance. Our decisions are informed by planning considerations tied to these policies, but it is not a pure science. We must weigh up the benefit and harm when coming to a view. The arrangements for conducting this meeting will be as follows. Officers will introduce each application. Any members of the public or applicants or agents who have registered to speak will then be invited to speak and address the committee in turn. Members are reminded to keep their questions to the point and on matters of clarification for planning issues only. Technical questions or clarification of details of the application will generally be best directed towards the officers. Committee members will then discuss and decide on the officers' recommendations of each application. May I also be clear that we cannot receive questions or comments from anyone in the public seating area. Please be assured that the committee will aim to thoroughly question and consider all the matters before it in coming to a decision. When we come to a vote on each application, recommendation in the report will be done by raising of hands. I will then ask those of you voting against the recommendation or abstaining to confirm the specific planning reasons why you are doing so. In the event of the vote being carried against the officer's recommendation, I will ask the officers to comment on the validity of the planning reasons, and if recommended by the officers, members to vote again and whether to defer an item for a further report on those reasons. If for any reason a member is not present for the whole of an item, they will be asked not to vote on that application. I will now ask all members and then officers participating to introduce themselves, and I'll start in a clockwise direction by Councillor Rush.
My name is Spencer Cross. I'm Vice Chair of the Lichfield Planning Committee.
Councillor Andrew Rushton.
Councillor Joe Powell.
Councillor Serena Mills.
Councillor David Salter.
Councillor Sonia Cleverly.
Councillor Richard Stevenson.
Councillor Tom Marshall.
Councillor Sharon Taylor.
Councillor Day Evans.
Councillor Michael Galvin.
Councillor Anne Hughes.
Councillor Jan Ancatel.
I'd often ask the officers now to introduce themselves.
Richard Thomas from Staffordshire County Highways.
Kerry Challoner, Development Management Manager.
Watts, Senior Planning Officer.
Chris Smith, Senior Planning Officer.
Stuart Evans, Legal Advisor.
Ian Long, Managing Planning Consultant.
Jane Cartwright, Governance Officer.
Christine Lewis, Democratic and Elections Manager and the Deputy Monitoring Officer.
Thank you very much. Thank you to those councillors that came to the planning training last week, and a particular welcome to Councillor Stevenson, who's here for the first time. Do we have any apologies, please?
We do, Chair. We have Councillor Ashton.
Thank you. Any declarations of interest, please? Clockwise.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I have to declare that the applicant on 25/00939/FUL is well known to me. Given that the relationship gives rise to a perception of bias or lack of impartiality, I wish not to participate in the consideration or determination of the planning application. I'd also like to declare, Chair, that case number 25/046/OUTM and case 23/01087/FULM, both in my ward in Fradley.
Thank you. Councillor Mears.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I'd like to declare an interest in case number 25/00939/FUL as being a part of a family-owned business. So I'd like to step out of that.
Councillor Waverley.
I'd like to declare an interest in case 25/0046/OUTM and 3/01087/FULM because I am the ward councillor for Fradley and Orwells.
And I will also declare an interest in both the cases that cleverly I've declared an interest in because I'm the ward councillor as well, but I will declare a particular interest in 25/0046/OUTM, where I do intend to address the meeting as ward councillor.
Thank you. No. Okay, I'll declare the interest, and I also know the person involved in the final application. The final application of 25/00939/FUL. And I'm going to take it that everyone else sort of declaring the same interest because we know who the person is. Any further interests? No? Okay, thank you very much. Moving on then to the minutes of the last meeting. Any observations in relation to those, please? Yeah. Thank you. Have we moved? Anyone seconding? Okay, Councillor Cross, all those in favour? Thank you. Now we move on to the bones of the meeting, and that is to look at the first application, which is 25/00046/OUTM, land east of Fradley Lane, Fradley. And I'm going to call on Ian Long to present this. At the conclusion of this, our legal advisor will comment in relation to one of the conditions that have been put forward. So I'll call on Stuart Evans straight afterwards.
Thank you, Chair. Not working.
Also, please.
I just have to click through in the old-fashioned way. So this is an outline planning application submitted by Bloor Homes in respect of the erection of up to 230 dwellings, including community facility, affordable housing, landscaping, open space, drainage, and associated infrastructure. All matters reserved except for access to Fradley Lane. It is being brought to committee due to objections raised by Fradley Parish Council, the application being an adopted local plan, and that the draft section 106 contains more than two obligations. Land is not within the green belt and is noted as being entirely 3A in the agricultural land classification and is within flood zone 1. The land does fall within a superficial sand and gravel mineral safeguarding area. However, it is not considered to preclude development as the operational capacity of the site as a quarry is limited by its proximity to existing housing, the A38, and existing utilities, such as the high pressure raising main within the 15-metre easement located centrally, as well as the BPA gas pipeline located to the northeast of the site. Onto the photographs. Picture 1 shows the approximate location of the site's pedestrian and vehicular access. Whilst photo 2 was taken on the public right-of-way footpath, which intersects the site. Photo 2 is looking eastwards towards the A38, whilst photo 3 looks westwards towards Fradley. So I'll just briefly go through the principle of development in a very shorthand summarised fashion. It goes into more detail in the planning committee report, but for the interest of brevity, I'll try and summarise it as briefly as I can, whilst hitting on the key facts. So, the adopted development plan for Lichfield District Council comprises the local plan strategy adopted in February 2015 and the local plan allocations document adopted in July 2019. Fradley is identified as a key rural settlement, being an accessible and sustainable location of growth, where approximately 12% of overall growth was directed in the local plan strategy. As you can see there, the local plan strategy included for a minimum of 10,030 dwellings over the plan period, 2008 to 2029, which equates to 478 dwellings per annum. Since the adoption of the local plan strategy, the NPPF, the National Planning Policy Framework, has been updated, being updated most recently in February 2025, which has reintroduced the standard method for determining local housing need. The impacts that this has had is that the local housing need for Lichfield District Council is now 745 dwellings per annum, which is an increase of 55.86% above the minimum figure set out in the adopted local plan strategy. Housing land supply, now published by the council, is 3.65 years, although the applicant has presented evidence that is in fact 2.42 years supply. Either way, Lichfield District Council is below the required 5-year supply thresholds as sought in the NPPF. So again, very quickly, the NPPF in paragraph 11D, which deals with the presumption in favour of sustainable development, is therefore engaged as the policies which are most important for determining the application, such as any policies relating to the scale and direction of growth, are considered to be out of date, whereby permission should be granted unless the application of policies relating to any protected areas, such as the Cannock Chase SAC, Special Area Conservation, provide a strong reason for refusal, or any adverse impacts of the proposals would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits when assessed against the NPPF as a whole. So regarding the criterion relating to the Cannock Chase Special Area Conservation, the applicant has submitted an appropriate assessment by way of the submitted Shadow Habitat Regulations Assessment, which concluded that a financial contribution towards the well-established strategic mitigation should be done through the Section 106 agreement, which would result in no significant effects being anticipated for the Cannock Chase. Officers have no reason to disagree with this conclusion. Therefore, this criterion of the relevant paragraph in the National Planning Policy Framework is considered to be satisfied. Regarding the second criterion, it is considered by officers that there would be no adverse impacts from the proposals which would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of the proposals. As is concluded in the committee report, the weight to be applied to the delivery of much needed housing should be afforded very significant positive weight in the planning balance when read in the context of the significant housing land supply shortfall. Further to this, the applicant has worked positively and proactively with the council, Staffordshire County Council and other consultees and stakeholders to demonstrate that the site is technically suitable and that any potential negative impacts could be satisfactorily mitigated either at detailed design stage or by way of appropriately worded planning condition. The application is subject to no objections from the statutory consultees. So this is an extract of the illustrative master plan provision C. The proposed development seeks outline approval for up to 230 dwellings, as well as land safeguarding for community facility, landscaping, open space, drainage and associated infrastructure, with all detailed matters being reserved for subsequent approval, except for the means of pedestrian vehicular access from Fradley Lane. The scheme would include 28% affordable housing, which would be 64 dwellings, reflective of the latest published model of dynamic viability, which is consistent with policy H2 of the local plan strategy. An indicative mix has been provided, which shows a 10-year split of 65% social rented units and 35% to be intermediate units, such as shared ownership for the affordable housing, which is also policy compliant.
John Hammond, WhatsApp audio.
The aforementioned access would see the creation of a 3-arm roundabout on Fradley Lane, which, sorry, the click is not working. Hopefully you can see what that is. Leading into the site with the primary road leading in an easterly direction, with secondary and tertiary roads radiating into the 3 development styles, as you can see. Turning area is provided from the primary road adjacent to the indicated community facility site for a bus stop to be located within the site, whilst a new bus stop would also be provided on Church Lane. The existing public rights of way to be retained, with one being slightly realigned to follow its true path based upon the established county mapping. New footpaths would also be created to provide permeability and connectivity within the site. The illustrative master plan indicatively shows how the site could be developed to accommodate up to 230 dwellings, along with ample public open space as well as play areas. A central area of vegetation would be retained and enhanced. I think you can just sort of see where that is, hopefully, between just as you're going eastward along the primary road. The central sort of green feature is an existing area of vegetation, which, as I say, would be retained and enhanced, whilst new landscaping would be created throughout as part of the achievement of the necessary biodiversity net gains, which is to be delivered entirely on site. Proposals, as you can see here, show an outline drainage strategy which comprises a variety of features, including swales located centrally within the site, which follow the alignment of the road, attenuation ponds located centrally onto the eastern region of the site, and a large infiltration basin located to the north of the development parcels. A condition is proposed which would see the provision of a fully detailed drainage strategy submitted to and approved by the council prior to the commencement of development. And is to be safeguarded at the southern end of the site, leading along the A38 to enable future junction improvements at the Fradley Lane junction for the benefit of national highways. This would be secured by way of a planning condition to protect its intended use. Land is also safeguarded within the site for a community facility. The marketing strategy, which will form part of the Section 106 agreement, the applicant would undertake a consultation and marketing exercise with key stakeholders such as the parish council, local community and community groups to establish the need for the community asset and its partner. The identified delivery partner would then prepare and submit their own reserve matters application for the specified land. All homes would provide a service plot as part of this arrangement, which would include the road connection as well as connections for water, telecoms and electricity to the site boundary. The applicant undertook community engagement where it had been sought for a clear, definitive preference for how the land could come forward for the community facility, but this did not fully materialise during that early engagement. Therefore, it is understood that keeping the intended use of the land flexible at this point, with a marketing period to follow, should outline consent be secured, would be the most appropriate way forward. The following slides are just a couple of CGIs that have been done. So as you can see here, aerial shot looking north across the site, or sort of northeasterly, sorry, with the A38 adjacent, the sort of the buffer that's being implemented with the landscaping between the road and the built form, the retained green area, and the development cells, as well as the 3-arm roundabout, which can also be seen on this slide. This is effectively sort of the entrance into the site. Obviously, the details being shown today are indicative, but it just gives an indication of what would come forward. As part of the application, the council worked with the applicant to make them come forward with further details around the design of the site through a site-specific design code, which has been appended to the design and access statement, which gives an indication of how the detailed design would come forward. This slide is just an extract of the site access design showing the 3-arm roundabout, widening of Fradley Lane, as well as a 3-metre wide shared cycleway and footway along the northern side of the road, providing connection into Fradley. Also to note, the current Y junction arrangement with Church Lane would be replaced with a T junction. This slide shows part of the proposals, a 20-mile-per-hour limit would be introduced to the area shown here, providing additional pedestrian safety benefits, part of Fradley, including along the frontage where the village hall and community centre are, and connecting into an existing area of 20-mile-per-hour restriction to the west. I'll just pass along to the Stuart Evans, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Long. Through you, Chair, just picking up on the presentation that Mr. Long has done. I think it's important, the recommendation for this particular matter, my papers appears on page 34 and page 35. Now, I think it's important that in relation to the heads of terms which are in the recommendation, that we just pick up on three things that was mentioned by Mr. Long in his presentation. First of all is the community facility that needs to be added, and also an offside playing pitch contribution, and also Mr. Long mentioned the TRO, so there will actually be a contribution for the 20-mile-per-hour limit zone as well. So those are things that do need to be picked up. In relation to the recommendation itself, members are minded to take this forward, I would suggest that the existing 2 is retained, but there is a new part 1 of that recommendation, which simply adds that authority is given to the Director of Planning to enter into an agreement under section 106 of the Town and Country Planning Act as amended, secure the following terms to be finalised by the parties, and that directly then refers to the terms, Chair.
Yeah. Right, I now listed 3 speakers. First one is the applicant, Oscar. If you'd like to come forward, you have 5 minutes in which to speak, which will start when you start to talk. Okay, if we can speak clearly, these points as much as possible, and you will be given 30 seconds notice when there's only 30 seconds left. And when 5 minutes comes, you'll be asked to cease if you haven't finished.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. The planning application before you this evening is a result of over 12 months pre and post application discussions with key stakeholders, local community and officers at the District Council. For those of you who are not familiar with Bloor Homes, we are the largest family-run house building business in the UK and pride ourselves in being a 5-star house builder. Many of our staff members live within the district, and in 2026, Lichfield will become the permanent home for our Midlands office, which is currently under construction. The outline planning application will deliver up to 230 high-quality net zero carbon ready homes, 28% of which will be affordable. Land for a new community building will be provided within the scheme, along with new public open space, play equipment and new walking and cycle routes. Land has also been safeguarded for improvements to the Fradley junction with the A38, should these be required in the future by national highways. 10% biodiversity net gain will also be delivered on site. In terms of improvement to local infrastructure, which we know is a key concern raised by the local community and parish council, Bloor are committed to making financial contributions towards enhancing local education, health, bus service provision, along with other localised highways improvements. Land for new community use has also been provided within the scheme. Whilst an end user is still to be identified, Bloor are committed to continuing discussions with key stakeholders, including the parish council, to find an end user for the site and have agreed to undertake a detailed market exercise that will be included within the Section 106 agreement. Further contributions towards allotments, playing pitches and Cannock Chase SAC will also be made. In their totality, payments towards the above infrastructure improvements amount to approximately £3.7 million and we will be secured through the Section 106 agreement. In addition to the above, a further £1.3 million worth of SIL monies will be payable to the District Council, a proportion of which 25% will be allocated to Fradley Parish Council. Fradley is a sustainable location for new housing and employment development and is confirmed as such in the Council's adopted local plan. Added to this is the Council's need to deliver more homes following the increase to their housing targets in December last year. The Council's current inability to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply is a key consideration in the determination of this planning application, which, following an independent assessment by Bloor's consultant, is thought to be in a much worse position than claimed by the local planning authority, 2.42 years versus the Council's figure of 3.6. Fradley as a settlement has grown in size over the years, and Bloor Homes have heard firsthand from the parish council and local community how schemes have come before us simply haven't delivered on the infrastructure promises. To demonstrate our commitment to the local community, the proposed development at Fradley Lane will deliver the promises made, and as such, draft Section 106 agreement has been worded so that the financial contributions are paid as early as practically possible, so that improvements to health and education are secured prior to occupations taking place. Public open space will also be delivered alongside new homes and completed and handed over to the management company before 70% occupations occur. A detailed marketing strategy for the community use will also be secured through the Section 106 agreement and undertaken in partnership with the District Council and key stakeholders. The scheme itself has no objections from any statutory committees, including education, health, drainage, flood risk, highways, ecology, policy, affordable housing, design and heritage. The development will help boost the council's housing supply and deliver much needed high quality, energy efficient market and, more importantly, affordable homes. Substantial Section 106 and SIL contributions will be secured by the development that will help improve local infrastructure in line with the statutory consultee requests. On the above basis, and as set out in the Planning Officer's report, we respectively ask members to endorse the Officer's recommendation and approve the planning application before them this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Second speaker is not a stranger to this room, David Latham. If like to sit, and yeah, I'll repeat it again. You have 5 minutes. Starts from when you begin speaking.
Good evening, everyone. I'm chairman of Fradley Parish Council. We've had many objections to this development, so many that I preceded them, sent them off to Bloor, who dealt with those objections in a quite an interesting and sensible way. But one of them has just come to light, which asks the question, why would we build 230 homes on the land where some few years ago one house was turned down as being out of the development zone area? I don't know when that was, because I've only just been told about it. So it's something for us to think about. When I met with Bloor, I knew it was going to be very difficult to get this refused, despite immense pressure from the public. They do not want this place to be built. We pointed out to them at a community meeting that the site was prone to flooding and, more importantly, the local sewage and wastewater disposal systems will not cope with any extra load. Even now, Church Lane floods when it rains. When it rains heavily, toilets block. My neighbours has even had frogs in her toilet
which is quite an interesting experience following a heavy rainstorm. That shows the state of our sewage system. The drainage there in Church Lane is impossible. It's completely blocked. The County Council have no means of freeing it up, so there is no access for surface water. That's why it floods. Staffordshire County Council are the lead flood risk authority, and they express great concern about this application. Severn Trent are equally concerned because, of course, they deal with the sewage, and they've made it very clear on 3 occasions that developer must seek their advice and permission before they do anything, drainage or sewage disposal. We specifically asked Bloor not to change our village triangle junction, and at the meeting I got the response, yeah, we can sort that out for you. Yes? Oh no, they're not. They're making a T-junction cater for the extra traffic from the estate. Fradley is a car-dependent community. Walk round it and you see there were very few one-car driveways. So this 230 development probably add 330 cars to the already overcrowded and damaged Fradley roads. I wonder about the sustainability of this application, because we wonder what benefit there will be to Fradley residents, and what wealth generation there can possibly be for anyone other than Bloor Homes. I appreciate that this is an outline application, but I ask you, the committee, to consider the depth and strength of feeling against it before approving it as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you. One other speaker, I've just welcomed him as a member of the committee, and I believe he's now going to speak. Member of the representative of the public as a ward. So, Mr. Stevenson, you have 10 minutes in which you can speak. That starts from the time at which you start to speak.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to speak as ward councillor for Alderney and Fradley. I think it's fair to say, from what we've just heard from the chairman of the parish council, that this is a fairly controversial application. You have a petition before you which I think has 680 signatures on it, which must be most of the residents in Fradley North. But as you also reminded us at the beginning of the meeting, planning decisions are based on policy, not popularity. So I will try to confine my remarks to planning considerations that I believe I share with many of my neighbours in the ward. But let's first say the people of Fradley are not irrationally opposed to development. They've seen plenty in the ward. And in fact, many of them, and I've just had the opportunity to speak to hundreds, live in new homes, often built by the applicant. So they're by no means opposed to Bloor Homes. They're by no means opposed to people having the opportunity to live in the beautiful village that they live in. And I appreciate, as we've already been told, Bloor Homes has a strong national reputation. I had noticed that you are a 5-star developer with well recognised year after year for delivering sustainable developments. And I acknowledge their design team has worked hard to improve the original proposals. However, what continues to be of concern to local residents, as reflected in the representations you have before you from people like Mr. Gordon Worrell, Mrs. Catherine McNeil, for example, is the lack of infrastructure to support the extraordinary pace of growth in Fradley, particularly in relation to healthcare provision. And I would suggest to the committee that this is contrary to the Lichfield Local Strategy Policy CP1, that's the spatial strategy, and policy CP3, delivering sustainable development. And also, we're beginning to get outside the national planning framework. That is paragraph 8, which says that development must reflect and future needs and support communities' health, social and cultural well-being. The applicant's agent, Fisher German, lists in their report to you 11 social benefits within their planning statement. Healthcare actually only receives 3 short lines, essentially saying that developer contributions will be required by Staffordshire Clinical Commissioning Group. The officer's report to you at paragraph 7.42 correctly notes that paragraph 20 of the National Planning Policy Framework requires strategic planning to provide for health, education and community facilities. And I have to say that in this form, and it's perhaps not the applicant's fault, but it does not meet those requirements and could therefore be also said to be contrary to local planning policy CP10, a healthy and safe Lichfield, which seeks to ensure that new developments generally support community well-being. And indeed, the applicant concedes in their own report that moderate weight should be given to this. At present, general practitioner options for new residents are limited to the Yoxall surgery, Albury Ross, or the 2 practices in Lichfield. Realistically, only the Albury Ross surgery is within a practical catchment of the village. It is already at capacity and physically constrained. So even additional funding will not resolve that problem because the Albury Ross surgery cannot be expanded and only has a very limited parking facilities. I fully appreciate resolving healthcare provision cannot rest solely with this developer, but strategic infrastructure must precede development, not follow it. And I think we've now reached the point where the committee must give heavy weight to the problems being faced by the residents in my ward who cannot get to see a GP. I also want to draw the committee's attention to what might seem slightly esoteric matter, but I don't believe that condition 18 regarding mineral extraction is adequate. We all appreciate that the site lies within the mineral safeguarding area, and the applicant's own assessment is that there is proven reserves of 167,000 tonnes sand and gravel and a further 356,000 tonnes inferred valued at £3 million. In the Fisher German report at sections 4.22, 5.15 and 5.17, recommends an earthworks strategy be developed at the reserved matters stage to explore the opportunity for prior extraction and to identify the quantity of mineral that could be removed. Staffordshire County Council as the Minerals Authority has accepted that recommendation, stating that the feasibility of extraction should indeed be considered. And I would have to put forward to you that I don't think that the reference at 7.53 in the officer's report actually mentions pre-extraction travel. The granting, albeit by accident, of a temporary quarry licence is very different to the granting an application to build houses, not least because it lies beyond the scope of the powers of this council. And I would suggest that this possibility of extraction from the site should be dealt with before outline planning application is granted. Therefore, I would respectfully suggest that the application should be deferred until that matter is resolved, which I don't think it entirely is in the application as it stands. And if I could then turn to transport and construction. Residents in their representations to the committee, such as Mr. Francis Byrne, make a very valid point that the only other access point from Lichfield into Fradley is via Turnbull Road and Common Lane, and they were specifically designed not to be through routes, and that is exactly what they're becoming. Fradley Lane is, as the chairman of the parish council has just said, is an essential part of the communications from Fradley because everybody has to leave there by car. And we need a very, very tightly drawn construction plan, because if that lane has to close, for example, while the roundabout is being put in, people will be effectively forced to drive through Turnbull and Common Lane just to get out of the village. And again, not the developer's fault, but at the moment we're suffering from enormous disruption from the works on the A38 and the projected 12-month closure of the North Lane slip road at Lichfield. And unfortunately, there could not have been a worse time to bring an application forward to build 230 houses in the village. I would suggest that that is beginning to impact very heavily on the people who live in the area. And finally, I would like to touch on community provision. Fradley is blessed with a community centre, a village hall. St Stephen's Church is being reordered to make it more accessible for community youth. And we already have 3 vacant sites in the village, all of which occurred through this same process. We were promised a new health centre at the end of Common Lane, for example. That has never happened. There was a site reserved next to the Stirling Centre for a pub. That has never happened because tenants and commercial agreements have never been reached. And I would suggest that that needs to be done before planning permission is granted, so that we know actually what that provision is going to be, because I can almost guarantee that I can come back here in 3 years' time and say that that site will be vacant, because we've got 3 that are vacant already. You don't need a crystal ball if you can look in the history book. So, Chairman, this application has been presented with professionalism, and Bloor Homes is an experienced and generally reputable developer. But even 5-star developers need to be held to the same clear standards of policy compliance and community protection. And therefore, I would respectfully ask that the decision is deferred.
Thank you very much. There are a number of points that I felt were covered by all 3 speakers there. Looking for my first input. Marshall.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you. Lots of points have been raised by everyone who's spoken, actually, and I have to commend all the speakers for doing an extremely good job. Latterly, of course, we heard from Councillor Stevenson, who made some very, very valid points, and being an inhabitant of the village understands the situation as well as anybody, I think. So I have, obviously, I think there were 85 letters of objection, but and a petition as well. There's a great deal of antagonism towards this, and that's not directed at Bloor Homes specifically. It is simply directed at the principle of more development. And I noticed that there was one of the objections from the letters was a badger set. So I don't know whether that's valid, but I did see that a badger set was being interrupted and disturbed. If we can come on to that a little bit later, please, if we could. I'm a little bit confused about the housing land supply. This is a subject which doesn't keep me awake at night, but it certainly gets my hackles up, because we used to have a very good housing land supply. And then because of an arbitrary decision made by a third party, namely central government, we now find ourselves very much on the back foot and at a huge disadvantage. But it's written in the report it's 3.65 years, of course, which is inadequate. But if it is, in fact, as was suggested by the applicant's agent, I think 2.42 years, then we're in even bigger trouble than I thought we were. So if there's any clarification on that available, I would very much appreciate it, please. I noticed that the provision of homes is predicated upon them being net zero homes. I think many of you will know that I hear the words net zero and my blood pressure rises quite considerably. The other point I was going to make was that I think the point of it, I know it's flood zone 1, so flooding from external sources is unlikely, but we seem to have a major problem, according to Councillor Latham, the chairman of the parish council, that there are some severe problems which probably derive from Severn Trent in terms of drainage, sewage disposal, etc. So if I could have some clarification on that, please, because I think that's a very serious issue in terms of creating another 230 homes in an area which is already under stress for its drainage. And I think that's probably going to be it from me, certainly for the time being anyway. But I hear what was said about the clinical commissioning group and the fact that medical provision is already stressed in Alderworth and Fradley, and adding another 230 homes with potentially, I would suggest, 500 new inhabitants can only create even greater stress for the health provision locally. So thank you very much. If you can address those points at some point in the meeting, I'd be very grateful.
Yeah, I mean, would you like me to just go through them now?
If you're happy to do that, if that's what the chairman
I
is.
think I prefer that. There were quite a few points there.
Thank you.
Rather than us losing small.
Super.
I'll do my best with it. If I sort of forget anything, just shout out. So, first point was around the badger sets that's been identified. That is the information which relates to badger sets is protected information, given their status as a protected species. So it's not, that sort of information wouldn't be publicly shared in terms of a planning application. However, what I would say is that the council's ecologist raised no objection to the proposed development, subject to the mitigation measures which have been put forward by the applicant. So I think that's probably as far as I can take it in that regard. You know, part of the detailed mitigation measures may include provisions for the retention and protection of the badger set, which would come through in the detailed design stage. But yeah, that's probably as far as I can go with it now, to be honest with you. The housing land supply position. So as you say, so for context, I joined Lichfield about a year and a bit ago, and we had a 9.9 year supply at that point, which was obviously backed up by the dwellings per annum requirement, which was contained in the local plan strategy. And that was how local housing need would be determined, would be locally identified, and that would be obviously, as you said, things have moved on somewhat. The National Planning Policy Framework has now reintroduced the standard method for identifying housing need, which is not a new thing, but it was something which was taken out by the Conservatives and has now been put back in by Labour as part of their strategy for achieving their manifesto pledge of 1.5 million houses to be delivered over the we call it the term to 2029 effectively. So what that has meant is that, as you say, the local housing need has been centralised, it's been taken away from the local level, and has been apportioned based upon a metric which the government decides and then gives back to the councils to say, this is your new housing land supply requirement, this is what is needed on a yearly basis. And as I think I showed in a slide earlier, it's about a 55% increase, which is obviously quite a big increase. You know, it's not, Lichfield is absolutely not unique in that. It's happened across the country, it's happened across Staffordshire, but it brings into another element of what is, I suppose, almost like a perfect storm in terms of planning policy, in that we do have quite an old local plan here. It's 10 years old, the local plan strategy. It's relatively aged in terms of what development plans should be, because, you know, planning per the NPPF it should be a plan-led system instead of the other way around, which is sort of where we find ourselves at the minute. So obviously the increase is going against, it obviously is a big jump beyond what is in the local plan strategy. Sorry, I've lost my place now. I'll come back to that if I need to.
Chairman, can I ask one supplementary question?
Yeah, certainly.
It's something which hasn't been touched on, but I think Mr. Long in his presentation did mention that the land classification, the ALC classification, is 3A. I have something in front of me from, and it suggests that, if I can just read it out, it's a very short paragraph. The highest quality, this is best and most versatile land, which is classified as lying in grade 1 to 3A. Natural England aims to safeguard this BMV agricultural land from significant inappropriate or unsustainable development proposals and reserve it for food production and other high worth crops. So we're talking about some good farmland here. 3A is classed as BMV, and yet we're going to cluster it with houses. So I'm just wonder, that seems to be in contravention of what Natural England would be suggesting is their aim. Don't know whether that's been looked at all.
Yeah, no, as you say, the applicant submitted a soils report as part of their application, which identified the site as being, I think, entirely within 3A, which, as you say, is part of the best and most versatile land. It's in terms of the hierarchy, 1 is the best, 2nd is second best, 3A is 3rd best, well, and then 3B is 4th best, I guess, if you could call it that way. So obviously, as you say, it's a consideration in the planning balance. Officers took the view that the planning balance, you know, we attributed very significant positive weight to the delivery of housing. So in terms of the planning balance where it feeds in, yes, that is obviously a point to take away and consider in the round. But it's considered that the benefits of the proposal would outweigh the negatives there. So it's acknowledged that is you know, it's 3A best and most versatile. I think the report identifies that there's some soil drought issues there, which it identifies as a potential constraint to its viability as good farming land. But as you say, it is 3A. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Back on track. So net zero homes. Yeah, obviously the applicant made a point of that in their speech today. It sort of calls back to a more sort of detailed matter to be considered at reserve matter stage around the actual nature of the housing, but you know, it's enshrined in the design and access statement, the site specific design code, with the intention being to sort of pull that through from where we are now, outline, indicative, through to what would be shown in the detailed design stage. So drainage issues, absolutely, you know, completely correct that it's a local issue which has been identified and has been you know, very much brought to our attention through the many comments which have been submitted. There's sort of 2 parts to it, I guess. The lead local flood authority, which deals more with the surface water drainage. There was some work that the applicant did with the lead local flood authority to progress the outline drainage strategy. So that was put through a couple of different iterations, with the final outcome being that the LLFA were comfortable with what's being proposed as part of the outline drainage strategy, which I briefly went through on the illustrative master plan page, slide even, and they confirmed no objection. Severn Trent Water, again, they confirmed in their response that they were satisfied subject to imposition of a condition, which I think may need adding in potentially as an additional condition, but that will be taken as wording from their response. So that's an action for us.
Very much indeed, Mr. Long. Thank you.
Councillor Hughes.
I had some few points, some of which were similar to ones we just heard, but it seemed to me that it is a problem if we don't even know or we're not confident in what our housing supply is. But it also seems to me that we're advised at the beginning that that it's not a pure science what we're doing, and that we have to judge, presumably, whether the adverse impacts significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. But then we're always told that the question of housing supply trumps everything. And I'm not against increasing our housing supply, but I'm not clear that we have to do it, you know, right now. We have to treat every application perhaps more leniently than we would have done, you know, a year ago, because we're getting a lot of big developments. We want to pick the best ones, presumably. So I'm a bit worried about the impact on us as a committee, that we think, oh, you know, we haven't got enough houses, we must tick all the things. I'm also worried about these massive long lists of conditions, because we know from other things that come to the committee that conditions, once the development gets underway, those conditions are often become very difficult, and then we're sort of backed into a different corner where we we basically have to agree to vary a condition, because they're not always, not always, of course, through the developer's fault, often because of highways or whatever. It does seem to me there are some serious problems with this development, as well as a lot of good things like net zero. Again, I don't agree with Councillor. But the questions of drainage seem a problem. The questions of the, badgers may be a problem. I also wondered about something that's raised in these, about the limiter. The picture's gone, but the green boundary between the 38, which and the noise and all the rest, because that seemed to be important to the village setting and to residential amenities. I also did wonder about the ambiguities about the community facility, but I think Councillor Stevens, basically you don't want that sort of community facility, but that seems to be something that needs further definition of what would be provided if it's going to be a pub or whatever, instead of that needs to be settled at an early stage. So I have some sympathy with the suggestion that we defer, particularly because, I appreciate, there's probably good reasons for it, but reading out a revision of the 106 conditions orally also doesn't seem to me to be quite appropriate, and that some of these things should be settled before we agree it, rather than left for conditions that will just come back to us in a
Mr. Long, you want to come back on any of the things in there?
Yeah. So the housing land supply point first. So as you say, there is science to it. The way that it's worked out, the council, we have, as officers, we have to rely upon the latest published position, which is dealt with by colleagues in policy, where the latest published position is 3.65 years. I understand that's due to be updated before too long. Speaking sort of anecdotally, I feel that it may go down instead of up. But the fact of the matter is that the applicant has presented evidence to suggest that the housing land supply is worse than what we've published, where they've critiqued what we've published and identified that there's question marks in there. We've chosen not to argue against that because we do have a recent relevant position which has been published this year, which we feel at this stage comfortable to rely upon. In regards to noise, so the applicant has submitted a noise impact assessment as part of their proposals, which the Environmental Health Department have reviewed, and they were comfortable with what's being proposed. I think a lot of the mitigation measures that would be introduced would come forward through the detailed design phase, which has been conditioned, I think. So that would be part of the detailed stage. Then the community facility. So as you say, Bradley already benefits from Village Hall Community Centre. So the intention for the community facility, as it's referred to here, is very much, as I understand it, is not to have something to compete with those facilities. Obviously, I think the developer would be keen to see those facilities survive and thrive, so that the residents of their scheme could make use of them as much as the people that already live in Fradley. As I understand it, the process that was went through as part of the community engagement with stakeholders came up with a number of different options that could be a potential use for the community facility land, as we call it, which there was no one sort of prevailing idea for how it could come forward, which the applicant felt comfortable sort of putting in as part of the development here. So the intention was to keep it quite flexible at this stage, with the view being that through an appropriate marketing and consultation period, which would happen following securing outline consent, that an appropriate, or not appropriate, sorry, bidders would come forward with the business cases, and within that period, you know, an identified delivery partner would come forward. The council would have involvement in that. We would get sight of the bids that were put forward and the evidence that they were submitting regarding the viability of the use, etc. I'd one point to come back to about the healthcare, which Councillor Marshall raised, which is relevant, I think, to the community facility point. So the applicant has engaged in a number of discussions with the CCC, the Integrated Care Board, around the potential for the community facility to come forward as a potential satellite facility for healthcare. The ICB concluded that that would be unsuitable given the potential size of the site and staffing issues that would come with it, with their preference being for financial contributions to be made to enhance existing facilities, with the view being that you know, their preference would be for a larger facility to come forward at a later date.
All right, I think in relation with infrastructure, we don't have power within this committee to dictate what that community space can be used for. So we got directed to be something for a care facility. Fairly reasonably well, and there is nothing there. But we don't have the power within this committee to direct that, do we?
You would be engaged as part of the consultation process through the marketing period, which would form part of the Section 106 agreement. So that would engage with, you know, ward councillors, councillors as a general, local community groups, to come forward. Obviously, there's confines to the extent of the community facility land, which again would form part of the Section 106 agreement to effectively, I guess you could call it, carve out that land for the preferred delivery partner to come forward, submit their own application on it, and then, as I say, you know, benefit from connections to utilities.
Thanks. Before I move on to the next, I was just going to mention net zero. It doesn't necessarily mean an alternative way of doing something. It just means energy efficient and cheaper to run, particularly in relation to building materials. Councillor Salter, please.
Thank you, Chair. Land allocation, yes, we know we now have this shortfall, but I am wondering, I can't really expect an answer, the director or the exact answer, I don't think at this stage, but has there been any calculation as to where we are with the housing requirement numbers so far? And we have had quite a few, as we mentioned, large developments, and there was also the infills, the backland and the knock one down, build three, all over the area. So they add up, you know, there, two there and so on. They do add up over a period of a year. So is there any information about a shortfall? I know it's always nice to have something in the back pocket, if you like, a little bit of an extra to fall back on. But are we in need of the number of houses being put forward at the moment, or indeed anywhere? Just this one. So that's one thing that you may not be able to answer straight away, I appreciate. 37 conditions have been mentioned earlier. Again, a lot of conditions there, many of which will, I've no doubt, be questions as it goes through. In fact, we're looking at removing some conditions on another application, aren't we? But I did wonder, the concept design that we've seen, I think it's called the illustrative master plan, looks very nice. It really does. There's a beautiful layout, lots of green space. And I wondered whether, should this go ahead, whether perhaps at condition 11, which is to do with the green space, etc., or maybe a separate condition, another 38, to sort of guarantee a fixed percentage of ongoing green space, which can never be developed if we can lock it and secure that green space. Because all those big green areas, you know, you set a precedent by building that number. Oh, there's a bit of space there, we stick another 10 in or whatever later on. So can we protect the green space that is shown in the concept? And then thirdly, I have a bit of a problem with the 20-mile-an-hour situation. Richard's just come back in, he might be able to inform me for his morning. From experience in my ward, I believe that neither the county council nor the police aren't particularly enthusiastic at enforcement of 20 zones. For me, rings alarm bell straight away.
Okay, thank you for that. So coming back to your first point around how's land supply, where are we? Obviously, I think the latest published position is sort of back in February. So 3.65 years as of February. The applicants come forward saying 2.42 years more recently.
Sorry, I'm not looking at land availability. I'm looking at how many have we built, have we got a record for?
That is dealt with via colleagues in policy as part of their yearly monitoring and updating. So the authority monitoring report goes into detail through the housing land supply report, which is appended to that document, which they're updating at the moment. I asked them the other day when it was due, and they're in the process of updating it. So that is due to be updated very shortly, as I say, and as part of that, they will go through the planning register, see what's been approved, identify what's been developed, when was it developed, are these sites coming forward as they should be, has delivery been slow on some of these bigger sites, has it been fast? All of these things, they're a consideration, and train of thought again.
So it's numbers, not it's
that's it. And obviously we've got the emerging local plan, which they're working on at the moment as well, which is due for its regulation 19 pre-submission consultation in the spring. And as part of that, because they're going to be identifying draft allocations, they'll be having to update the numbers as part of that to project how many houses are going to be needed as a minimum over the plan period. That's probably about, so that to answer your question there.
That one, yes, yeah. So the condition in respect of preservation of the green space on that particular site.
Sure. So
just in relation to the local plan, that does that to a certain extent, because it identifies the areas that we not necessarily want to build something, but are more suitable than some of the others. So once an up-to-date local plan is in place, it gives us more strength and more power to be able to turn something down. I think it's been explained already that one of our problems at the moment is the local plan we've got at the moment coming towards the end. So it almost secures the green spaces better because we've got a more up-to-date local.
But if the model has been broken, if you like, and you've given permission to build on that plot of land, then that sort of circumvents the protection side of it.
I think so. The developments, including for its requirement of biodiversity net gain, entirely on site. So I can't remember the exact percentage, but it's required by national policy to be at least 10%. It's above that.
Looking at that plan, it looks almost 50-50, really, not including private gardens, but green space and housing.
It's about 39% of the site is open space, which would include retained enhanced landscaping, which would form part of the biodiversity net gain calculation for the site, which would form part of the Section 106 agreement with management and maintenance duties as part of that.
So that would be protected.
It would be protected, yeah.
One was on the 20 mile an hour.
20 mile per hour.
Yeah, Richard.
Yeah. Richard came back in the room at the perfect
right time.
Happy to take that, Chair, if that's okay. So you made the point about the county council and the police not being keen to enforce. I mean, specifically, the county council can't enforce the speed limit.
Not enforce, but grant.
That's okay. But it is a police job. That makes that clear. So I think there are appropriate places for 20 mile an hour, and perhaps some would say, I think in terms of what the applicant's done here, working with colleagues of mine before I joined even, to look at the village in general, the impact of the traffic on it, how the routes can be made sustainable for non-vehicle trips. It links to slowing traffic down. That means it's better for cyclists. There is an option there if you've got slower traffic. By having the contribution as part of the 106 means that the county council does then have the power to consult on what it would do in detail. It might include some physical measures, not just here's a 20 sign and it increases a zone. So at the moment, there's an existing 20 in part of Fradley. We would look to connect that. The applicant is mindful to perhaps even make their development part of that 20. As you left the A38, before you hit the no access roundabout, that might be the start of the zone. and it would then pan outwards in those three directions. I think some of the resistance under police is often when people want to put a 20 on in a blanket area without doing too much to change, when the existing, recorded speeds are quite high, or certainly around the 30. It's hard to get that down quite quickly. But I think the nature of Fradley itself, with what the applicant's proposing, I think it'd be quite good here. The police will be consulted when the order is being made anyway, as will all residents and everybody else with a traffic order. So there'll be a second chance to do that. But I think it is appropriate for what's being put forward.
It's appropriate, but wouldn't be, this is my question really, in respect to.
I can't speak on.
No, I appreciate that.
But I think they would support it personally,
Not quite the answers I've received from the police. It tends to be lack of manpower and availability. If I may, Chair, just finalise with, given what we've heard from Councillor Stevenson, the initiatives involved, particularly in respect of investigation for extraction, etc., and the subterranean infrastructure problem, alone the healthcare side, may I propose deferral?
So that's specifically around the investigation.
Well, yeah, I think there was quite a list of things that Councillor Stevenson suggested deferral should be.
Come back to that in a moment then. Councillor Powell?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, the extraction idea is one that concerns me. If they take the land and they go for extraction, that means these poor people, they're going to have maybe 10, 15 years with lorries trundling in and out, taking out sand, etc., etc. And then Blora are expecting to come back, fill the hole with whatever, and build their houses. Well, two things to that. One is that we have a 3-year rule. So if they don't start building the houses within 3 years, all this is null and void. So what we're doing here is discussing it, if that's what they're going to do. Can we have some guarantee from Blore that they do not intend to take the extraction of there? Because it must be worth many, many millions of pounds to them, the contents of that landfill, or that land site. And, if that's their intention, why don't they just come for the extraction first and come back in 10, 15, 20 years? Because what they're asking for, if it is extraction, does happen or is applied for to start with, that'll give them maybe 8 to 10 years of extraction. Well, these figures are absolutely meaningless in 8 to 10 years. As we said less than 18 months ago, our figures were completely different, and then central government stepped in and changed it all. You're going to get another change of government in the next 8 to 10 years. Are they going to change it all again? I think there are too many variables there. I would certainly agree that deferment, I'll second that, whilst we get some sort of guarantee that there will not be extraction.
I just touched on the minerals extraction point. So, as I understand it from the report, there would be a significant cost to the developer if they were to proceed with extracting all of the mineral, and then having to effectively backfill the land, which may render the site unviable. I don't know. We're not privy to those sort of discussions. I think there may be, as part of the development, I suppose they could maybe make use of some of the minerals material that's on site. We've not seen anything before as it suggests that they would look to do it.
It still doesn't guarantee that they're not going to do it. And if they do go for that sort of extraction, even on a limited scale, it's still going to be distress vehicles all the time, etc. It's got to be something we've got to look at first before we even think about granting permission to build houses there.
I'm not sure I've got that straight in my mind at the moment. So at the moment you're suggesting that if we were to grant this today, doesn't stop Blore Homes from then using.
Well, no, because they come back and say, here, we want to do another application to extraction.
Presumably would be what they came here in the first place for, if that was what they wanted to do.
Who knows? Only they know.
I was just discussing this with Mr. Evans. I think we should look to include provisions in the Section 106 agreement that would preclude the extraction of the site. I think we would still need to discuss and agree that with the applicant, which may shed a significant amount of light upon their intentions for it in that regard, which is, you know, obviously something that we've not done to date, given that they are a house builder. They would most reasonably want to come on and build houses and get them sold as quickly as possible, so I'm sure.
Would that be strong enough legally if it was challenged at a later date?
Through you, Chair, in the sense that the 106 agreement would bind the land. So as a consequence, yes, it would be strong enough in that sense. And then if a fresh planning application was then made, clearly that would then be subject to review at that time. But if it's something that law would agree to, as Mr. Long has said, they are actually a house builder. So one would think what they actually want to do is construct houses and not actually have a quarry, extract whatever's there. But there's no reason why 106 agreement couldn't be used. Any landowner can agree, still has to be still compliant, to bind their land in any way they wish. So that was something we could investigate further with them.
Thank you. Yes, I wish we would.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Evans.
Chair, a number of things that I was going to ask have been already covered, but I'll ask a few minor ones. As far as the footpaths go, we're told it's a realignment. Now, a realignment, I assume the difference between a diversion and a realignment is that the realignment is shorter than a diversion.
Yeah, sorry, carry on.
We can answer that if you like now.
Okay, yeah, no, that's fine. So the relevant public rights of way officer was consulted as part of the application, and it was actually they who identified that the initial illustrative master plan had the public right of way footpath in the wrong place against what is on the county mapping. Because what's happened over the passage of time is that the actual footpath, as you can appreciate on the ground, has somehow been done some distance to north. What you've got is him proposing to pull that footpath, keep it in its entirety, not to get rid of it, not to do anything with it apart from to move it ever so slightly south, sit along the alignment of the public right of way as it's shown on the mapping for county. So it would still continue as a footpath. You probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference on the ground in terms of where you were in relation to the boundaries of the site. It's just that it would follow the true alignment as shown on mapping. It's just a passage of time has meant that people have walked, for whatever reason, ever so slightly too north.
Footpaths are important to people. And can I go on to the community building? We're told that, and I've heard exactly what Councillor Stevenson said about there being other buildings that are available for whatever is necessary. But if we're told that within the 6 months, the consultation, it will be a serviced building. Does that mean, therefore, that if the 6 months expires and that nobody comes forward, it will not then be a service building? It will have to be one that whoever comes into that building has to do their own services. And aligned to that is the 39% of public open space. Does that include the land that's earmarked for the community building, or and if so, what does it reduce it by, the 39%? And I know this is probably very early yet, but when we come to the management company, I hope that we ensure that whoever is going to be the management company, that they will deliver what they say they're going to deliver, because I understand that a lot of management companies are not delivering on areas that they are supposed to have done. And finally, one of my pet things is, I think throughout the planning stages, we must ensure that the development does deliver the right kind of affordable and social housing, because on so many occasions we've seen that that has dropped, and we know that there is a great need for those properties in the area, and certainly across the district I'm talking about, and certainly for those to be kept. Thank you, Chair.
Coming back, the third point was around the community facility. So just to clarify, so it's labelled as a community facility, but that's only in terms of outline. So what the reality would be is it would be a parcel of land which has been safeguarded for a community building to come forward as part of a detailed application to follow outline consent. And that was intentionally done, keeping it quite flexible, because the actual end user of that facility is not known at this point. So it wouldn't be a community facility building as such, which would be sort of created and then people will come forward and say, oh, we could use that, and then they'd come forward for it. It would be a service plot of land which is connected into the utilities, which a delivery partner, so whoever the group would be that would come forward, would have their own development needs in terms of what the building would look like, in terms of what it would do, which so they could create their own space effectively within that service plot of land. They could plug it into effectively, if you get what I mean.
I understand that, but we were told that you just said that it could be a service plot of land, but if not, it reverts back to public open space.
Yeah, so that is if no delivery partners are found, and the agreed marketing period passes without there being a successful bidder, then the land could revert back to being part of the public open space. So the fact that it's been labelled as a service plot would obviously be contingent upon a delivery partner coming forward to submit detailed proposals. So again, it's dependent on the nature of the building that they would need, where the connections would be made, what the extent of utilities that would be needed as part of that. So it's all, but the marketing strategy just enshrines that law would provide that service plot to work with a delivery partner as part of that in that regard. Okay.
Yeah. The 39% then.
Yes. Yeah. So the 39% point, 39% is approximately how much of the site would be open space. So I think we sort of cross-referencing 39% with affordable housing. I think I picked up. Affordable housing is 28%.
Counted.
Oh, I see what you mean. It wouldn't. I think it wouldn't have been as part of the proposed. It's a good question. It wouldn't have been as part of the proposed development that you see before you here. But obviously, if it reverts back to being public open space, then the 39% would go up certain percentage points. Then thirdly, around management companies. So as part of the section 106, there'd be provisions around securing an appropriate management company. I hear what you're saying around the issues that have been had, across the district, across the country, with management companies not fulfilling their duties appropriately. So this would be, within the gift of the wording of the 106 to ensure that there's proper review mechanisms in place to ensure that they are doing what they should be doing. And fourthly was on affordable housing. So as I say, the scheme provides 28% affordable housing, which is policy compliant, policy H2 of the local plan strategy. And within that, the mix would be 65% social rented and 35% intermediate, which is basically shared ownership, which the housing strategy officer has reviewed and given the thumbs up to effectively. No direction from her.
I asked that question because on so many occasions we've seen these developments that have gone ahead, it's blocked, and we've got to ensure that it doesn't drop anymore.
So perhaps just through you, Chair, the section 106 agreement, part of the 106 agreement in the affordable housing schedule, taking into consideration that percentage, the actual affordable housing strategy has to be agreed with the council as a prerequisite.
Okay, councillor Cross.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm very concerned about this excavation work. I cannot believe that they are not going to do this because to the information I've read, there's £3.5 million worth of minerals in there to come out. I would like to see some assurance from Blur that they will not be excavating that prior to any development on that site. Otherwise, if they do extract it and get the planning permission from us, extract it, it's going to be years before they'll be starting to develop. The other concern that I have here is the upgrading of Fradley Lane, which is much needed. We don't seem to have any plan of how they're going to do that. The road is very narrow now. You can hardly get 2 vehicles to pass by on it. So if they're going to be working on that, whether it's for the extraction or whether it's for the development, it means that all the traffic that would use that, including the school bus, have to turn around in the village and go back out. Everything going through Turnbull Road and Worthington Road and Common Lane. And it's a nightmare now, everybody from Fradley village going through those roads to the Stirling Centre. So we would be adding even more the problem that we've got there existing, and it's wrecking the roads, and the roads are not getting repaired as a result of it. So I'd like to know how they plan to do that road without creating a lot of disturbance to the residents to get in and out of that of the old village. Coming on to the community facility, that's been addressed quite well by most of the members here tonight, and I've been listening quite carefully to that. I believe, and I've read, that there's a 6 months marketing programme there. That is not enough. We've had land before that's marketed for 12, 18 months. It's not brought anybody. 6 months is not going to be enough to market it, get somebody interested. They raise the finance, they come in for planning permission. It's not going to happen in 6 months. So we may as well kiss that proposal goodbye. That's just going to end up as a POS, unless we could have some assurance on that. 6 months is not long enough. We need longer to market it. The parish council, we need some input to that. The ward councils will want to have some input to it. But I read it that Blur are going to be doing the marketing, and Blur will control that. And that's not fair. We need to have more input in that, and we need to have a longer period of time on it. The other concern that I've got is the T-junction and the finger post. Parish Council just spent a lot of money on renovating that finger post and getting it reinstalled. The T-junction is a feature. It's an old feature of the village. And nobody within the village wants that T-junction changed. We do not want a big roundabout there. We want to retain that T-junction and the finger post where it is. So we need some assurance that that will, if they want our support, that that can remain. Looking at the drawings, it doesn't see any reason why it can't remain. Just to say that you're going to have another 200 houses coming through there, it's not going to make any difference at T-junction. So we'd like to see that. As far as the design is concerned, I quite like the design. I think it would be a very nice layout. It would be quite nice there, better than what we've got there at the moment. And it's not really used for much farming other than cutting for silage or hay. But there's a lot of issues here which need to be addressed by Blur and satisfied us and the residents and the parish council, and they're not being satisfied. This all seems to be their way. They've had a consultation, which was a public consultation, but I don't think it's been enough consultation to sit down and really go through the concerns that so many of the residents, including myself, including my colleague here, who's and I support everything he said in that document. And I also support that this should be deferred until Blur can come forward with, I was second, that it's deferred until Blur can come forward and satisfy us with some of these issues, which is causing a lot of concern and upset within the village.
Okay. In relation to points or questions. I think the main one was in relation to the road itself and the construction strategy, but presumably that will be for.
So, as you say, the details around the construction has been conditions. I think it's prior to this commencement. It may even be prior to submission of first reserve matters application. But I understand that Flora more than willing to come forward with their construction management plan as early as is needed. I appreciate it's it's an incredibly important document. So I think it would be, certainly it's in there as a condition. In terms of highways improvements, was there much? Yeah, do you want to cover on that, Richard?
So through you, Chair. So in terms of Fradley Lane, which you mentioned, so there are some improvements planned. They sit within the application in the transport assessment. There's quite a detailed, colourful drawing. So it includes a realigned section once you've left the A38 to a new roundabout, which was touched on in Mr. Long's presentation. After that roundabout, either into the site or going north, the road will be wide enough for the bus service, so that's 6.75 metres, which I think touches on your minibus query. The site itself will be bus friendly, so the applicants worked with us and our infrastructure team to make sure buses can penetrate the site. Mr. Long mentioned a turning facility, so that's all set out in the outline master plan, and that'll be brought forward in reserve matters. The finger post, excuse my ignorance because I joined this application a little bit into it. I understand if it's the finger post on what is called the Y junction, that could easily be retained. There is a condition which I've seen in the planning reports, whether Mr. Long or others want to check, that talks about how it's to be dealt with and retained and protected. I'm happy to take away an action for it to be that be connected to the detailed design for the new junction, which is only making it simpler and a bit safer for the new traffic and including some speed reducing features. I don't see a problem with that being part of any route.
I believe it would be safer the way it is as opposed to being a junction.
Quite possibly, yeah.
Because people won't stop at the junction, they just tear over it. But the way it is at the minute, they're almost forced to slow up that junction. And it should remain as it is. We plant it, or the parish plant it. It's beginning to look nice. There's been a lot of work and money spent on that Y junction over the last couple of years. And I don't see why a developer should come along and think they can just change it without consulting with the parish council and the residents.
Thank you. Councillor Anketell.
Two things. If we did give them permission to build houses, and then they wanted to extract gravel and stuff, they'd have to come to us to ask for permission, wouldn't they?
I think that's going to have to go to the county council.
Yeah, county council.
Yeah, but hopefully they would tell you if they did do that. The second thing is we keep on saying they should have up to 40% of affordable houses. It's nearly always less than 30%, like 26%, 27%. So can't we do something, say something more strongly so that it is set 40% or at least 35%, as opposed to up to less than. If they're more than, it's got to be more than.
Sure. I'll just quickly touch upon the minerals point because I know it's come up quite a few times. So, yes, extracting minerals takes a long time. I don't know how long that is, but as part of the conditions, the condition number 1 requires an application for approval of reserve matters to be made before the expiration of 2 years from the date of that decision, and then that approval would have a time limit upon it as well. So they would be effectively working against the clock to extract what they need to out of it, get an application to county for the approval of those details, get on with it, do it all, with the potential for this consent to expire. And who knows, by the end of that time, there may be a different way of calculating housing needs. The conditions may have changed, they may not have done, but it's a consideration. Just briefly on that point. Secondly, around affordable housing. So as you say, the policy does refer to up to 40% in policy H2. However, it also goes on to discuss around the dynamic model of viability, which is updated every year in the authority monitoring report. as the accepted percentage of affordable housing, which should yield sites which are viable, which means that the council are not subject to repeated viability arguments or submissions arguing below the percentage which should usually be required. It's only in exceptional cases that that's been done. So the applicant is completely policy compliant in seeking for 28%.
Okay. Most people have had an opportunity to speak at this point. If I can try and sum up, and please feel free to correct me if I've got it wrong. At the moment, one of the main issues seems to be around the minerals that may be quarried at a later time. On this a slightly dangerous point, this has come forward because looking at the option of having a housing estate next to Fradley Old Village or a quarry next to Fradley Old Village, I don't know which of the preference is. So this could turn out to be something quite complicated. We have a proposal to defer the matter this evening from Councillor Salter for investigation into the mineral side of things. We also have a seconder for that from Councillor Powell. We also have the suggestion that it could be conditioned under a 106, under the 106, which is still to be arranged, that it is not quarried. And if that 106 were not entered into, it would not be quarried. I've got a couple of other conditions that also got mentioned if we were minded to approve, and that was the drainage strategy. What's just the drainage strategy?
There's already a condition in around requiring a detailed surface water drainage strategy, but it's very specifically worded to be around surface water, and that should either be amended to include sewage or have a specific condition attached around detailed sewage strategy.
So at the moment, we have on the table 106 condition that no quarrying takes place. Timescales involved would be large if quarrying was to take place, and they would need further application to the County Council. We have a motion to defer it for the investigation of the mineral sites, and that has been seconded. So I would like to deal with that first, if I'm dealing with that correctly.
Yeah, Chair, can I? Yeah, you are Chair, but what I think would be helpful for officers is just to fully understand what the deferral's for, so that we can actually report back to you and provide you with the information you actually need, and we can engage properly with Blaw as well. But, you know, I sort of just listed a few things while I was listening to members, and from Councillor Salter, I think we had the mineral extraction point, we had the health point. We also had, which I think Mr Thomas will deal with anyway, is the upgrade of Fradley Lane from Councillor Cross. I think we had the point about the T-junction, which again, I think Mr Thomas said he could take away and give further consideration. I think that came from Councillor Cross. I think the further point and I think this was from Councillor Cross, was concern about the period of marketing for the community space. So that was my understanding. Those were the reasons for a deferral, or the recommendation for deferral.
On a Chair. I mentioned I know it's strictly not within our powers, but I think investigation certainly needs, or further investigation needs in respect of the subterranean infrastructure, the sewage. I know it's been sort of covered as a condition, but we are suffering greatly with problems of using Victorian drainage for our modern lifestyle. There was quite a list, if I can refer to Councillor Stevenson about his fairly lengthy list of issues that need to be addressed before further action, as it were.
So I've got a list of things: the mineral extraction, the matters around health we have discussed, but We looked at further upgrading of Fradley Lane, that has been discussed. So we looked at further the T junction remaining as a Y junction and the community space and the marketing of. I think I'm right in saying it's a community space that's set up. It's not a building. It's to be provided if someone comes along. So whoever needs to be found does need to find the finance in order to put that into place anyway. Right. The proposal is to defer. And those are the reasons why it is being deferred. So all those in favour of the matter being deferred.
Two, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, I think.
11, because I'm not sure councillor Anketel has voted yet.
Those against? Mentions? Okay, that matter is now deferred for the reasons given. So the public are aware that was a vote of 12-1. Okay, if I can thank the speakers for speaking this evening.
Chat 11 and 1 abstention, wasn't it?
It's because you as chair, you didn't indicate. So I've got 11 for deferral and 1 abstention.
So it's 11 for
11 for
the defer and 1 abstention from
11 for and 1 abstention. Okay, thank you very much to those people who sat and listened. I think we have a comfort break at this moment.
In-depth
Thank you. If I can welcome you back after that short comfort break, after that quite long hearing that we just had for the last application. The next application is 23/01087/FULM, and that is Roxane UK Limited, Hangar 5, Fradley Airfield. Details are going to be given to us by Blythe Smith, who's sat next to me.
Yeah, so as mentioned, this is application 23/01087/FULM for Roxanne at Fradley. Roxanne is an established bottling facility which has been in this location for some time. In 2018, we approved a new building to enhance their facility. This was approved under 18/00262/FULM, and that building has been constructed.
Bear with the slide.
Sorry.
There's a bit of a lag.
It's a bit of a lag.
Yeah, mine's better back to my emails.
Yeah, I'm going to stop sharing and try again.
As you can see, apologies. The nearest residential properties are Gauls Farm to the east and the Spinney to the north. As you can see, the red line boundary goes around part of the site. However, Roxanne does own most of this land, apart from the 2 residential properties, as mentioned, and the caravan storage to the north. And on this, you can clearly see the Tesco distribution centre, which has been in operation for some time, to the east, sorry, and the Kerber sprint track down towards the south. We have some photographs of the site. This is photograph 2 is to the entrance of the site, which has been implemented in accordance with the submitted plans. You can see some of the landscaping in photograph 2, where they've decided to plant the trees, and photograph 1 is showing the area to the left of the access, which is due to be planted. Next. Here's a photograph to the eastern boundary of the sites. As you can see, the area closest to the bottling facility, which has been defined by some fencing. Just to reiterate to members that this is a Section 73 application to vary conditions on the 2018 permission, and that the principle of the application isn't to be revisited, as that has already been consented and determined. The main changes are seeking to regulate some elements to the overall scheme. The main parts to highlight are there is some additional plant that has been added to the north of the site where the green star is. The landscaping has had some slight tweaks to it, and the implementation of the cycle storage. We'll come back to the additional plant in a moment, but with the landscaping, there is at least additional 6 new additional trees to be planted to the front access. There are no TPOs on the site, and we're happy that the landscaping meets our policy requirements. Cycle storage has also been provided on site, which we're happy with, and proof has been provided and in an appropriate location, which addresses the original requirements of the scheme. The additional plant, this has had a live enforcement case on there since 2020. There has been some noise considerations that do arise from the additional plant, and we wanted to make sure that we were balanced with the application, as we do not want the company to be able to carry out. We want the company to be able to carry out their operations, but we also need to protect the neighbouring properties. Environmental health have been involved in terms of noise abatement. We have had protracted conversations with our environmental health team, and we have a new condition, which is condition 2, to the latest supplementary, which seeks to look at some noise mitigation in a separate way. This time we're trying to be a bit more proactive than provide us a noise mitigation scheme, as we want to ensure that we're happy with the noise at the site boundaries. That now gives the developer time to find a suitable way to meet the requirement, such as if there's more in-depth noise mitigation needs, like fencing or different fans are needed. But it will allow both sides to really pinpoint the area where that mitigation is suitable. So condition 2 is to submit a plan to us within 2 months, and then we will then dictate what mitigation we will need. And that is the main headlines of the application.
Thank you. I've got 3 speakers on this one as well. The first speakers are objectors, and between them they will have 5 minutes. The first speaker is going to be Ranjit Srai, and the second speaker is going to be Andrew Pickering. When Ranjit finishes and indicates that Andrew's going to take over, that would be great. As soon as you've got total of 5 minutes to speak between you. So if you use pretty much all of it. 4. Do you want a reminder at 4?
Please, yes.
You can have a reminder at 4, but thank you. The last speaker will also get a reminder at with just 30 seconds. Okay, Ranjit, your time starts when you start to do your presentation.
This is about context, and this is about information that we're missing. Let me give you the context. I live on one of the residential properties nearby to that site with my wife and my kids. For 6 years, I've struggled, absolutely struggled, with the noise that's being generated from the building that was consented in the 2018 consent. There have been at least 6 planning conditions that have been blatantly breached. We're talking about pre-commencement conditions, not even pre-occupation conditions, breached with impunity. I've been on to environmental health. I've had the enforcement team onto this. Enforcement have been running an enforcement case for about 4 years. We haven't gotten anywhere because the applicant has just not cooperated. We find ourselves here about 5 years later with this Section 73 application, the purpose of which is to sanction what's been done previously, i.e. the breaches. Now, that's putting me in a very difficult position. I've been very open with the planning officers, with the local councillors. I've tried my best to engage with the applicant. They don't want to know, they don't talk to you. This is the first time today I've met a representative from the applicant. Now, I'm struggling to see how we can take this forward. I could spend not much time, I haven't got much time talking about the technical problems. I could refer to the recommendation report, which incorrectly, unfortunately, says that the environmental health team are happy with the proposals. They're not. So on the 30th of July, John Mills of the environmental health team submits a statement saying he's unhappy, he needs more information, he needs to know what the noise outcomes are, he needs to know what the surveys are. The surveys themselves don't even measure noise near my property. There are diagrams in the noise impact assessments at the back which show the locations that noise was measured, not even near my property. And then unsurprisingly, the report concludes that the noise impacts on my property are not even perceptible. Is that credible when we have an enforcement action which includes enforcement action deals with other conditions, but also with noise? So we're in a situation where we have an incredible set of reports. We have a situation where the environmental health officer statements are not being even considered, as far as I can see in the recommendation. I spoke to Jack Twomey today, who's the enforcement officer. He's still running his inquiry, his action, and he wants to get to the bottom of this. The solution seems to be to come here today and to, according to the applicant, to just sanction what they want you to sanction. My plea, having heard from Jack Twomey today, who wants another couple of months, as I think the planning officer mentioned, to try and agree some noise limits. My plea here today is that we do that. We defer this. We get the applicant to provide some proper noise measurements, including from my home. I'm the person who had this called in. Ultimately, it was the previous local councillor who called this in because of my situation. And so I want this, if possible, deferred. And the reason for the deferral should be more accurate noise information. And then the other bit that Jack Tomey wants us to do, or wants his team to agree with the applicant, which are credible noise limits, which can then be.
My name is Andrew Pickering. I own the Spinney Gorse Lane, Fradley. My property is directly adjacent to Roxanne and we share two boundaries. I wish to express my concerns regarding the proposed installation of a 2-metre high fence as a noise mitigation measure. I struggle to see how such a barrier will make significant difference, given that the pallets of bottled water are currently stacked higher than this along one boundary, and I already have a conifer hedge on the other boundary that exceeds this height. The main noise issue I experience is high frequency sound that appears to originate from within the factory itself, rather from external operations. In view of this, I'd welcome the opportunity for the appoint a noise consultant, acoustic expert, to engage directly with me, discuss the situation, explore effective solutions. Also concerned about what steps will be taken if the fence is erected and no noticeable improvement occurs. Would it not be more appropriate to ensure that no suitable...
Okay, sir, thank you very much. Okay, we have a third speaker on this, and that's it. This is Mark Heaven.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Same rules apply for yourself. You have 5 minutes to present your details to us, and that will start when you start to speak. You'll receive 30 seconds notice when that's about to finish.
Thank you, Chair and members. I speak on behalf of the applicant Roxanne UK. During the application period, we have worked proactively with Lichfield District Council planning team, who have fully scrutinised the application, resulting in the recommendation for approval by the planning team as detailed within the planning committee report. Addressing any concerns regarding noise, we clarify that Roxanne UK appointed an acoustic consultant as part of the application process to assess the impacts of noise emissions from mechanical plant and operational activities associated with the development. The report concluded that the noise levels are considered acceptable, with the inclusion of the measures detailed within the acoustic report, including a 2-metre high acoustic fence, which I believe was approved under the original application, convex mirrors installed on all blind bends to reduce the need to beep horns, roller shutter doors to be closed when not in use. Also, for clarity, the latest comments received from an environmental health officer have not been ignored. As a matter of fact, they have been addressed during the application period with information and clarification on various points sent to the planners. Not to confuse this application with any other application, we will clarify that any further application for development on the site would be considered under a new application where Roxanne would look to actively consult with the neighbours as part of the pre-planning process. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Councillor Powell.
Yes, Chairman, are we not bound, as it's our officers, our environmental health people, etc., who are in the process of looking at this, to defer this until we hear back from them?
So would have is the email stated, I think, or mentioned, was July this year. Is there any further update from environmental health since July this year?
Yeah, so we've been speaking with environmental health both over email and in person, and there's a couple of emails which need to be uploaded, but we need to redact certain sensitive information on there. We spoke to Jack Toomey in regards to the new condition, who Jack Toomey was to us. I don't know if we mentioned it, who is the environmental protection and housing manager to the team. The new condition would ensure that plant level noises would not be exceeded above a certain level, and would be a much more suitable condition than the ones that were proposed previously or confirmed previously. But those locations will need to be agreed with both the agent, the LPA, and the environmental health officer. So there has been additional conversations with environmental health.
Chairman, through you, I'm sorry, but we should have been made aware of this.
In every single application that we receive, there will be 100,000 emails passing to and from.
From our environmental health people, there are environmental health people.
Yes, and I agree, and that's why the update from our environmental health people, which is more recent, is possibly what we should look at rather than a conversation that took place in July.
Where is it?
We have to defer, sorry.
Yeah. Sorry?
Sorry, Chair, coming in there.
Councillor Salter, you did want to speak now.
Thank you. I have to agree with Councillor Powell. Yeah, we are not given full information to look at this properly. It's you know, we are hearing that there is an ongoing investigation. We've been told now that it's sort of concluded by gentleman's agreement almost, if you like. We need to see this evidence. We need to see what the situation is and where.
Just for clarity on that point, because it's come twice, are we at the conclusion of the discussions, hence we've reached this condition point? Kerry Challoner.
Yeah, so through you, Chair. So sorry, you have received a supplementary, an additional supplementary today, which kind of where all the conditions were refreshed, and then discussions have been going on today with the environmental as well. And Jack Twomey, as just said, is the environmental health manager. It's
Jack.
very much been part of these discussions.
Is he specifically responsible with these conditions?
In terms of the noise, this is the big headline, so to speak, for this application. We've got additional plants being added to the building, and then we do have, so like I think has been mentioned, we've had an ongoing enforcement case. So we need to make sure that we cover this. And in the past, the previous conditions looked at noise management plan being submitted prior to any work's taken place, and yes, the applicants have breached that. However, discussing this with Jack this afternoon, we've come up with a new solution, which would be condition 2 set out in the supplementary report this afternoon, which effectively looks at the noise from a different direction along the northeastern and southeastern boundaries where the two properties are located. So if I can get my cursor, there's a bit of a lag. So the resident from the Spinney, that's it, yeah, you're up here, yeah. And Mr. Sarai, you're down here, aren't you, on Gorse?
That's correct.
Lane? Yeah. And I believe Mr. Twomey has had a conversation this afternoon about this as well. So the condition that's before you this evening, so in the updated supplementary, would look at
what would
mouse reduction? So basically, along the top and along the side elevation, the noise would be measured from them locations, and that would be in the condition states that the level of plant noise emitted from the site will not exceed a specified level measured on them boundaries. The specified noise limit and the monitoring points on these boundaries shall be agreed with the local authority within 2 months of the date of this permission. Now, in order to get to the agreeable noise limit, we have to effectively turn everything off in the factory. So we've got a base level. So Jack is fully aware of this. And this is where we've got to with this condition, which we consider as enforceable and meets all of the tests. And so that's just the update before you this evening. The conditions have been refreshed, but essentially it bulks all the noise into condition 2, which is enforceable and within 2 months would get us to a place. And that would also involve, if mitigations need, because it might be that they could just upgrade the fans that aren't as noisy, or it might be that they need fencing, and this is what the stage that we're at. So
Councillor Mears.
Could I ask the officer what the limit is for noise in outside work environments?
So I did ask this a particular question, and I think it's quite Blythe's probably got more technical advice than me maybe, but it's around the 50 decibel, around sort of 55 to yeah. But it also depends on what the background noise is. When they turn everything off, it might be that the bass level is a little bit higher.
Depends on the distance you're measuring from.
Yeah.
Every yard
That's why
drops it.
this condition takes it from the fence line, which is.
Adding on to that, can I ask what noise level is currently?
I haven't got that in front of me, and I don't think that has ever been measured adequately from that fence line.
Can I say that we don't, I think the outline of the condition is really sensible. However, the numbers that would give that condition the strength for an enforcement officer to back up are still up for negotiation. And we're being asked to give planning permission to something that's been a major issue to the residents for some years without having the full information available to make that decision on. So I feel that we need to know what the base level is and what the proposed allowable level is to see whether that is livable for a residential environment before we give planning.
Yeah.
Right, in relation to that, if we're going to decide what a acceptable base level, we're not going to decide because we're going to ask our environmental health team to advise what an acceptable level is, which through the condition is exactly what we will be doing. We'll be getting our environmental health people to advise and set that condition as to what a reasonable noise level would be. We could defer, it's down to the committee whether they decide to do that. We could defer them to tell us what the number is. We then take their guidance because they're the experts. We come back here again in the future. Is this the only issue there is in relation? Sorry, Councillor Hughes. I've got Councillor Marshall and Councillor Hughes who still both want to speak. So before I move any further, Councillor Marshall I think was first, so I'm going to go with Councillor.
An addition. I was going to ask you a question.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I think I was just looking for clarity on what we were considering would be an acceptable decibel level, to be honest with you. I haven't heard any figures being bandied around, so I have no idea what we're talking about. I know we've talked about 50 and 55 decibels. I don't think that would be enough to cause a nuisance, if I'm honest with you. I'm not suggesting for a moment that the residents are over egging this in any way at all. But I think the noise levels must be higher than 55 decibels for it to be a nuisance. And I've had experience over the years with planning where two different reports have been commissioned, one by objectors and one by an applicant, and they bear no resemblance to one another. And I'm very concerned that noise is, I think we talked earlier about a degree of subjectivity within the planning process. And never is there more subjectivity when it comes to measuring noise levels, it seems to me, because what is acceptable to the applicant and what is unacceptable to residents appear to be one and the same thing. So it's a very difficult one to reconcile this is. I have the utmost sympathy for the people who are suffering noise nuisance because I know how debilitating it can be. But I do think we need to establish scientifically what we're talking about in terms of noise levels, because I'm rather confused. And as I say, I'm not suggesting for a moment the residents are being particularly sensitive to this noise level. I have no idea what we're talking about here. I really would appreciate some more scientific evidence if it was possible to achieve it. Thank you.
Councillor Hughes.
Confused about the whole paperwork we've had for the, which probably is my fault, but we've had so many supplementaries and some of it seemed to be about trees, about landscaping, as well as about noise. So I'm not clear what we're, and I wasn't clear. Some things were discharged, like the cycles, as they were presumably that had been done. But there seemed to be some cues about noise particularly, but also landscaping, and there were several versions of what was done about the trees or the landscaping. So is it just not, is the one we got at 6 o'clock this afternoon, and I understand now why which is unsatisfactory, but perhaps perhaps couldn't be avoided. Is it just what precisely are the amendments actually voting on? What we're voting on, what was discharged, or well, if we don't defer, what's discharged, what's been varied?
I will come to co-channel in a moment. Primarily, they're looking to discharge three of the conditions. The trees couldn't be varied because the trees have been taken down, so you can't vary that condition because they don't exist. The construction plan, you can't vary that because they've constructed. The cycle, yeah. So the cycle storage, there is sufficient storage there. So the actual storage that was asked for, there is storage there. The noise at 9 and 16 and the landscaping, I think is probably to placate the fact that they got rid of the trees in the first place and to put some more landscaping in. And the noise aspect is the one that is causing the most discussion. And what is the appropriate way for measuring that noise and blocking out any inappropriate noise?
It's a very good summary, Councillor. This application seeks to regularise the development effectively. The main headline is the noise considerations, I'd say. Landscaping has been tweaked, so that needs to be regularised. Cycle storage, we now know that's fine. But yeah, noise and the sort of approach from the environmental health officer, I think, is a good one. Controlling the noise at the site boundary. I know I mentioned 50 something decibels before. I am not an environmental health noise specialist, so I cannot pretend to be. And I hear what members are saying in terms of the specific numbers.
Mr. Cross.
Thank you, Chair. I heard about the noise and I have been in one of the properties 3 or 4 years ago before Councillor Wilcox called this in, and I've listened to the noise at the ground floor level and at first floor level, and it was, to me, it was unacceptable at that time. I cannot see anything here to show that that's changed. I do know that enforcement has been dealing with it. We've had several enforcement officers working on it, and then things have stopped. I believe now things are moving forward on it, but I don't see anything in front of me here to say that those enforcement issues on Roxane have been dealt with, and they have a history of just ignoring enforcement and ignoring our planning conditions and just getting on and doing their own thing. So I'm bothered here that if we gave this permission tonight, that a lot of these things they're promising to do will never happen, and enforcement will never get round to prosecuting them or anything like that. I'd like to see this deferred until they can come back and show us what they intend doing and when they intend doing it. And the noise needs to be controlled because these people have suffered grossly for too many years now with this noise situation. And there's nothing here, we're all talking about it, to say that's going to change or has changed.
Councillor Salter.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I totally agree with Councillor Cross there in respect of deferment. I'd second that. We talk about noise. It's just a word in that sense, and we can shout it or we could whisper it. It's not all about decibel levels. We've heard 55 mentioned. I'm talking with my hat on as an entertainer and a long time provider of public address systems and all that sort of thing. It's not just the volume, it's the pitch, it's the frequency in respect of how long it continues for. Is it a constant low frequency drone? Is it an occasional high pitched whistle? We've all probably heard of the little gadget that came out to dissuade congregation of youths. It was called the Mosquito. Most of us in this room wouldn't be able to hear it at all.
It got banned, didn't it?
It got banned.
It worked though.
It worked. It worked very well. Under 18s can hear people at 20k. So I believe it's not just a case of our environment officer going out with his dB meter, which I've got my own, I could go there myself. It needs a full acoustic evaluation.
Okay. Councillor Galvin.
Not the only one struggling with this one, am I? I just wanted to clarify, do we have two options for this? We can either defer it and we can get this added information that everybody's agreed, or we could accept it, but then with the enforcement from environmental health, because either way this is going to come back again. So I'm trying to work out which would be the best option, kick it down the road or try and deal with it now with enforcement. So
You are correct in that there is a condition there to monitor what's happening and to put things in place and to ensure that certain levels are reached. And enforcement would, if it's taken 4 years so far, then that's perhaps not necessarily a good advert for the enforcement side of things. On the other hand, you tempted to agree with you in that just moving this further down to another meeting for the same decision.
So I'll propose that we accept with the enforcement from.
Councillor Stevenson.
As a new member of the committee, I just would like some clarification on procedure here, because there are a number of aspects of this proposal that are not controversial. We all actually agree on them. There's one that we don't agree on. Is it possible for us to accept the bits of the application that we actually agree on and just defer the bit concerning noise that we don't agree on? At least that would sort of move things forward a little bit. I do have a second procedural question.
That was my next question. If we defer, can we be clear on what we're deferring for? And it certainly sounds like it is noise information, doesn't it? So.
That's Salter.
Yeah, it is precisely that. If we defer, then it's on that particular thing. And with the greatest respect to our own team of officers and Jack and his co-workers, I believe their only means of assessment is decibel readings. And I really feel we need much more in-depth.
So I'll be right in thinking you're looking for an in-depth plan as to how noise is to be assessed at this to come back as part of.
Just volume, it's frequency in both terms, that's pitch and
controlled.
But at the same time, as Councillor Galvin said, this is conditioned to meet our environmental health's criteria for noise. If we feel that we need to scrutinise what they are measuring and the aspects that they're measuring, then yes, we should probably move to deferral. If we're relying on our professional experts to make the decision in relation to noise, then perhaps we should pass it. But fortunately, it's not just my decision. So I've got Councillor Mears again.
Thank you. This has come before the planning committee tonight, the planning committee to make a decision on it, not for us to make a decision that then allows an officer to make a further decision outside of the reach of the committee. We're here to represent the residents, and the residents have clearly stated there is a long-term issue with noise. We're not being given any feedback whatsoever as to how bad the current situation is, what's acceptable in the workplace and what's acceptable in the residential environment, and what that difference is, what the size of what needs mitigating. But it's come before us because enforcement haven't been able to deal with it, and there is definitely a problem which they're trying to address with a planning application outside of the enforcement. I feel that due to the size of the problem and the fact that noise, you can't see it and you can't touch it, but it can have a very serious long-term effect on health that we need to have the solid numbers to make a decision on. And that's why we need a full acoustic survey, which will take into account the information that Councillor Salter has recommended. So I'd like to propose that this is deferred until we have.
Third person to propose deferral. I've already got someone proposing deferral and someone seconding it. So you can be thirding it if you want.
But I'd like to see a full noise survey done, and that as the reason why we're waiting for the why it's being deferred. That it's not just a case of the environmental health officers.
Okay, so it's the depth of that survey and what it
holistic survey
within the condition that we're asking. Is that clear in relation to? Okay, we'll go to. It was initially proposed by Councillor Powell for the deferral, and then Councillor Cross seconded, thirded by Councillor Mears. So if we go to that, all those in favour of deferral at this point for that one aspect.
2, 7, 8, 9.
9, yeah.
Nine.
The chair voted
Chair
against.
as well.
All those against?
4, 5.
Any abstentions? Okay. So that matter has also been deferred.
Is that the one aspect, Chair? It did say when we voted deferral on the one aspect.
We defer it on the one, and I believe we then come back to determine all of it. We can't pass past of it, can we?
Yeah, so when we come back, we'll come back with the additional noise information. Everything else, it's been moved on the basis of the noise and outstanding noise information. So we won't be able to revisit the landscaping or the cycle storage, for example. That's clear.
That seems to have been addressed anyways.
So just for those people who not see on the cameras exactly what the vote was, that was 9 people in favour of deferral and 5 against deferral. So that will also be moved to a further meeting. Thank you very much to the speakers again.
That's fine, I might have to have a recording.
Going now.
Yes. Application 25/00939/FUL. Wellsmead London Road, Well, Sutton Coldfield. And someone is going to present this one for us.
Thank you. So this application seeks permission for the retention and continued use of the existing building for car sales purposes at Wellsmead London Road, Camwell. The application is before planning committee as the applicant company includes a serving district councillor as director.
Interest, who is it that's someone stamp on it or move it or get outside the door?
Let me take it to the chair.
No, it isn't.
I'll not listen to that.
Councillor Clay, please.
It's probably recorded. It's already recorded.
Lost internet, please come here.
Yeah. Okay.
Get this noise with pencil and paper.
Is that silence now? Please continue.
Okay, the application is before planning committee as the applicant company includes a serving district councillor as director. In addition, the application has been called in by Councillor Crofts in support. This slide shows the location plan. The red line boundary identifies the part of the site subject to the application. Members will note this covers the existing commercial building at the centre of the site, the parking area in front, and the access onto London Road. Importantly, the red line does not include a large building to the rear of the site. That building was erected without planning permission and is the subject of ongoing enforcement action. It does not form part of this application.
Sorry, can you repeat that? Which building?
There's a building to the rear of the site outside of the red line plan. On the west. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. That's not included as part of the application. So we have an aerial photograph illustrating the site's relationship with London Road to the northeast and the A38 to the southwest. The nearest dwellings are positioned either side along London Road. Some photographs. The first photograph shows the site frontage, looking into the yard. It shows the existing commercial buildings. Photograph 2 shows the existing access from London Road. Photograph 3 shows a side view of the two buildings which form the subject of the application. A smaller office cabin at the front and the larger commercial building located centrally within the site. Both buildings were included within a 2019 certificate of lawfulness, which confirmed the lawful use of the site for the sales, servicing and repair of lawnmowers. Those buildings have been established in situ for at least 16 years. Photograph 4 shows the large unauthorised structure to the rear of the site. It's that green building there. This building was recently erected without planning permission and is currently the subject of separate planning enforcement proceedings, which will continue regardless of the outcome of this application. The building does not form part of this application and is outside of the red line boundary. This slide shows the proposed plans and elevations. There's no physical alterations proposed to the buildings. The application relates purely to the use of the building for car sales. It's proposed that up to 6 vehicles will be stored inside the building at any one time, and that all sales will be strictly by appointment only. In terms of conditions, members will note that the recommendation secures the appointment only operation, limiting activity to 1 appointment per hour and prohibiting HGV or multi-vehicle transporters. Activity will be confined to the building's yard and access within the red line boundary. A condition requiring improved visibility displays at the access was requested by County Highways, but has not been included in the recommendation, as the proposal does not intensify the existing lawful use. Therefore, such works were considered on balance not to meet the tests of necessity or reasonableness under paragraph 58 of the NPPF. Similarly, separate conditions on the opening hours and external vehicle display have not been included, as the appointment-only model inherently restricts activity and there is limited space for any external display. So again, those conditions were not considered to meet the test of necessity or reasonableness. In summary, the site already benefits from a lawful commercial use for lawnmower sales, and the current proposal for appointment-only car sales represents a comparable level of activity. With the recommended conditions in place, officers considered that the impact on residential amenity and highway safety would be acceptable. The recommendation is therefore that the application be approved subject to conditions. Thank you.
Unusually no speakers. Councillor Hughes.
I tempted to ask for a site visit and deferment, but I'm not going to ask that. The thing that I was really interested in, because I'm a very sad, swotty sort of person, is the calling by Councillor Cross. I'm going to come to this committee anyway. And a highlight of my week is reading, the week's planning application. And could I then see ones I think are really nice, but don't quite trust the officers to agree to, and call them in wherever they are, wherever, not confine myself to trying to, modify the listed buildings of Stowe. I thought it was very, and I also, it's been edited on the summary, but Councillor Cross's calling form says everything in the proposal is truthful and honest, whereas the parish council statements are defective and untrue, which seems rather, you know, whether so.
I sort of see where you're going, but I think we really need to get back to the planning application.
It's a good look for, calling for retrospective permission and to also be subject to, you know, planning enforcement.
Councillor Galvin?
Yeah, mine was just, we mentioned pet peeves earlier. One of my pet peeves is it seems that someone's been found out doing something not quite as they should, and so they're asking for retrospective, struggled with that word, planning. What I found interesting is that, yeah, it's been called in by a councillor from another area, and yet the councillor who covers this area doesn't think it's such a good idea that he's called it in. And as well as the local council that said that, you know, this isn't so, this isn't right. I think we should take some weight from what they have to say. But I realise we're really struggling legally to block this now, and it's already been built. So I just want to.
I think it's probably right to say that because it is someone connected with the council, the decision whether to defer or approve would have had to come to us anyway, whatever that application would have been. Now, sort of think that it got called in without that knowledge, that it was going to have to be called in anyway. So because that calling went in, that's why Councillor Cross is not here. Anyway, because the views within that. Councillor Salter.
Yeah, again, I don't see how we can sort of use this. It's ongoing and it upset too many people, hopefully, provided they stick to all the conditions. But one of those conditions, I think I'm right in saying, said that there would be no signage. I'm led to believe, I've not seen it personally, but I only found out about it this afternoon. Resident bloke. Be a sign entrance for as a showroom, sales, whatever.
Councillor Stevenson.
I've got 4 planning questions to ask about this. Firstly, right to the County Council representative Highways. In your consultation report, you said that you wanted details of satisfactory visibility displays at the junction of the central access with London Road, and it should be submitted to the planning authority for approval. Our officers have decided in their report it doesn't need visibility displays. I mean, it is a road I'm actually very familiar with because I have lots of clients that live in that area. I must admit, I would tend to agree with the county council on this, but are Highways happy for there not to be visibility displays when you've specifically recommended that in your consultation response? That's my first question.
Through you, Chair.
Certainly.
So, yeah, you make a good point. So my colleague has dealt with this, but I have looked at it personally, and I had the visibility concerns. What I asked for was a bit more evidence as to the certificate of lawfulness demonstrating there's not a material impact in potential trips. On discussion with planning, that's been set out in a condition that my planning colleagues here are comfortable with, that they can control the trips for what the application seeks permission for in relation to what it does have lawfulness for, which is lawnmower use and the service and repairs. So I think it would be better, personally, if we could have better visibility displays for the junction. But in terms of them being tested by planning colleagues and what's appropriate, you know, we've come to an agreement that, you know, we wouldn't want to be refusing it on those grounds and therefore appealed against, and the only issue being the visibility display. So it's sort of an answer to the question, but I remain slightly uncomfortable.
I'm right saying if this committee saw it as reasonable to put those visibility displays in, that is something that could happen here.
That's an excellent question. I'd like planners to come in and finish off what I would have. I think, yes, that the red line does come up to the highway boundary. We checked that. I've been out on site and I did see a sign, if that helps put it on the record, as been mentioned. There is certainly potential, without massive disruption to vegetation, particularly trees, to greatly improve visibility and make the whole thing safer. That'd be my perspective. So subject to what planning colleagues say, it's a sort of a yes.
So yeah, I mean, our judgment was it was an unbalanced decision not to include that condition. Because of the previous lawful uses, lawnmower sales, we considered the impact of the access wouldn't be intensified such that a condition like that would meet the test of reasonableness. But the wording is there ready to be used. So if members felt that it should go on as part of the recommendation, then it can be voted on to be added.
Okay, Councillor Stevens, you mentioned you had 4 points, and I think that was one.
This leads directly into the second point, which I want to address to the legal advisor. And it's whether condition 2 actually is enforceable. Because there's no specifics in it. Hereby shall operate on an appointment only basis. I mean, the applicant has been very specific in the hours that they operate, and it is a concern to the parish council whether the stated operating hours should actually put into condition 2, which are 9 till 6 Monday to Friday and 9 till 1 on a Saturday, and no operation on Sunday holidays, and that would then become an enforceable condition. And then we have this business of only one customer appointment at any one time, which is also difficult to enforce. Could we put in there a condition that a register should be kept of customers visiting the site? And then I believe they might be legally enforceable, but I'm not a lawyer, so I'll just pass that back to you.
Through you, Chair.
Certainly.
Sorry, yeah, through you, Chair, Councillor Stevenson. It's quite nice to have a direct question, actually. In this particular situation, the use hereby permitted shall operate on an appointment-only basis with no more than customer appointment. So heavy vehicles will enter or leave in accordance with the additional information. So I think the important point there is the cross-reference to the additional information, which was dated and received on the 4th of September. So presumably, all of the concerns are dealt with by the additional information. Whether Kerry can help with the additional information.
Well, Tom might be able to expand on it more, but it's one document that sets out how the site will be operated, basically. We're happy with the way that operates in terms of our assessment. As a permitted lawnmower business, you might get I don't know, in the summer, you might get lots of people turn up on a Sunday or a bank holiday to get the lawnmower fixed. But this in our view restricts them quite heavily.
Okay, for as long as you think it's legally enforceable, because an unenforceable condition is worse than no condition, isn't it? Absolutely. I've got to say, I think a lot of second-hand car salesmen are often accused of selling lawnmowers. I've never heard it directly equated. The other point is, I did notice in the police response here, it did say that the building should be protected by a monitored alarm system. And that should be a condition of the application. That's in the police consultation. I don't believe that is in the conditions.
No, we would leave that as a civil matter. It would be the police that would enforce if there was any criminal activity. It's sort of overstep in what we do in planning.
Police are generally trying to detract and dissuade people from criminal activities. I think that's why they wanted an alarm on there. And the final point, again, I want to address the legal advisor. This applicant actually leases this premises to a third party. The garage business is operated by tenants. The tenant presumably has a lease. And have we had sight of that lease? And are there covenants in the lease that the landlord can use to impose these conditions onto the tenant?
This situation, that's a private law matter. It's not relevant for a planning committee. It's not a material consideration. But with these conditions, the conditions, if you choose to grant permission tonight, those conditions will be enforceable against the lessee and also the freeholder.
I think those are 4 points. I've got Councillor Marshall, I think.
Chairman, it's just a very quick observation. In all my years on planning, I've never seen these words in a planning application or a report. About 8.2 on page 74, it is noted, however, that this objection was submitted under the name of a third party who has subsequently confirmed that they did not authorise or submit the comment. I'm rather surprised by that, and a little bit puzzled by that. I think probably adds to what Councillor Hughes was saying actually about the nature of this. I'm not expecting an answer. I'm just expressing surprise at that being done by a third party, an anonymous third party, it would seem.
Councillor Powell?
Yeah, I will second the approval of this, but I would like the condition adding in the one about the road from highways. I mean, that road can be very, very busy at times, and I think it warrants, if you guys are bothered, we ought to be bothered. So if we could add that back in, please.
Unless I'm not the first one to propose it, I'm not sure anyone else has proposed it as such yet.
Propose it then.
So
Seconds it, since I mentioned it.
With that added condition.
With that added condition.
the added condition in relation to display, and it's already within it that the business can only operate within the red line area and not on the rest of the grounds that are owned. That's correct.
So, Chair, this is on the basis the members are voting on approval or refusal, whatever. But it includes the additional condition about the
display. But anyone else wish to input? Okay. Got it proposed and seconded by Councillor Bell, and Councillor Stephen then seconded. So all those in favour of this being approved? 2, 6, 7, 8. 8.
Yes, yes, sorry.
All those against? Abstentions, please.
4 abstentions.
Very much. So for people still watching at home, 8 voted in favour, 8 votes for, none against, 4 abstentions. That concludes this particular section. I think there's a confidential section to come. So the time is now 20:45. We've got 15 minutes left for our confidential section. So if we can turn it, yes. Do I need to read?
Yes, yes, please. Yes, no, I will.
It is somewhere.